Assalamu alaikum and welcome to another edition of The Issues with me, Harry Boota. Today I will be joined by Azhar Ali, Councillor Azhar Ali, who is the leader of Lancashire County Council. I will be asking him the questions and issues that are affecting all of us, especially in these difficult times now that we've got Corona that is now dictating which way the country is going. I'm sure that Azhar Ali will be enlightening us some of the things that they are doing within the county of Lancashire from his position to lessen the impact of what Corona is doing to people's lives and businesses. So let me welcome Azhar Ali to the issues. Welcome to you, Azhar Ali.
Nice being here, Harry. Good to be on your program.
Thank you very much indeed. Azhar Ali, let's start by just asking you about you. Who is Azhar Ali? Where are you from? What's your background? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, Harry, I was born and brought up here in Pendle. I was born in Briarfield and grew up here. Worked in the mills shortly after I left school. Went to college. That's where I started getting involved in politics, in student politics. I became president of the Students' Union at Nelson College. And then went on to university. And after leaving university, I decided to get involved in local politics and joined Briarfield Town Council and was the youngest mayor at the time of Briarfield and the first British Muslim mayor of Briarfield. Joined the Labour Party and then became a councillor on Pendle Council.
A quick question, because it intrigues me, this does. Why do students kind of end up going towards the left of politics? Why are they sort of engaging a lot with the... What is the problem? What goes on there that drives them? Even the teachers, for example, I see a lot of teachers, they're always on the left of politics. What is it? What happens there that we don't see?
Well, I think what affected me was Margaret Thatcher, because in 1979, when she became Prime Minister, I was just leaving primary school to join secondary school. And I saw the devastation that was caused in this area here in Lancashire, where textile mills were shutting, jobs were being lost. And on our TV screens, we saw the miners being battered by the police, and Thatcher was dubbed the Iron Lady because she wasn't...
But don't forget, in those days, she was the Iron Lady. You should have sort of got in behind her, because remember in the 70s, we had 3-day weeks. We had rubbish piled up in our streets. Something had to be done. Unions controlled the power that the unions held in those days. Was devastating this country. Right? Something radical had to be done, and Thatcher came and did that. So I'm surprised that you stayed on the left. You should have gone behind Thatcher then.
Well, I don't remember the 3-day week. What I remember is people losing their jobs, family members losing their jobs, shops and the bank starting to close in my town. So I saw the devastation that Thatcher was leaving in communities like Lancashire and other communities in the north. And I was very angry about that, and I felt that that was the wrong way to go about it. And so when I went to college, I joined the Students' Union, stood for president, became president, and got involved in politics. And it was about social justice and equality and fairness. And what Thatcher was doing didn't meet my expectations of what life in society should be. So I decided to get involved in politics and became a councillor here on Pendle Council at the time.
When was that? How long have you been a councillor?
We're probably going back to around 1993, 94, around that time, when I joined Pendle Council. And within a couple of years, I became leader of Pendle Council. And we had a big majority here for the Liberal Democrats. They ran the council for many, many years.
I'm very very pleased that you've really been heavily involved within the council, and you've had prominent positions throughout from what I can hear. As an Asian, as Pakistani, somebody with Pakistani background, what changes do you think have been brought about? With your, let's say, you being in a council, have you influenced any change? Have you brought any changes that benefited, our ancestors, our forefathers, and us, our second, third, fourth, fifth generation here? Have you brought anything that you can tangibly say, like, I have been at these kind of positions, at these kind of levels within the council, and this is my my contribution to our community.
Actually, if I sort of start to think about some of the things that I did when I became leader of Pendle Council, or when I was a cabinet member for health and wellbeing on Lancashire County Council a few years ago, I actually look back and there's many things that I could tell you, but one of the first things I did when I became leader of Pendle Council was I brought in the cabinet system, and we brought in CCTV in our town centres. A lot of people worried about crime, and the fear of crime was quite dominant, particularly with elderly people. So I ran referendums in the town centre asking people to vote whether they thought it was a good idea or not, and people supported that. We supported regeneration in some of our towns, all the way from Barnoldsey, Caneby, all the way through to Briarfield. And we spent a lot of money on making improvements that people wanted to see. Alongside that, we brought in public-private partnerships to run some of the council services, and I put the leisure services into a trust so that it could be run by the users themselves, and we could make better use of our leisure services. Alongside that, one of my big passions is health, and I was chairman, one of the youngest chairmen of Burnley Hospital Trust. And at the time when I became the chairman, it was a 1-star trust, and the maximum rating was 3 stars. And within 18 months of me becoming the chair, I transformed the health services in the hospital from 1 star to 3 star, and it received a lot of national acclaim. But the biggest thing was that we got, our patient surveys showed that patients were a lot more satisfied with our services, and we made massive investments in MRI and other services.
I'm particularly going to draw you into our community. The things that it's absolutely amazing that obviously as a councillor you have to work across the board to service everyone. But when a lot of the vote that goes to you is the ethnic vote, and the reason that they give you the vote is for you to do something for them. And when you talk about health service, and you've been a chairman of Pendle Health Authority, we have in the Asian community major mental health issues, especially with the Khwateen, with ladies. What have you done anything specifically for the Asians, especially as far as mental health is concerned?
Well, let me just say that a number of things that we did. One of the first things that we did, working with councillors from across the community and with our imams and community leaders, was we made sure that there was a land allocated for Muslim burials. That was a massive issue in our community. People were worried that they could no longer take their loved ones to Pakistan for burial. So we allocated land. We worked with the community to make sure we had a proper burial society, and that work happened. The second thing was we invested a lot of money into making sure that our Asian ladies could have ESOL classes, could have empowerment programs, so they could train and get into work. We did more than that. We made sure that our organisations like Pendle Pakistan Welfare Association, ITAD, they had the resources through lottery funding and through match funding through the council, so they could serve our elderly people with luncheon clubs and with other activities, so that they were integrated into our community. And the other things that we did around mental health specifically, which I did, was we made sure that the health service actually had bilingual staff who could work within our communities. Because you know as well as I do, Harry, that one of the biggest barriers is language and access.
Well, you mentioned the word ESOL. I think a lot of people will sort of skip over that, say what the ESOL is. So would you just explain for our viewers what ESOL is? Yeah,
we provided courses for people whose English wasn't their first language, so that they could learn English from a very basic level and progress through that, so that they could get into work and they could access services and they could help their own families.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to switch a little bit towards your national politics here, and the issues that we see as far as leadership is concerned. I think to 2019, I think you said that Jeremy Corbyn would be a disaster. Do you think he's still a disaster?
I think Jeremy Corbyn is a very principled individual, and my tweet was quoted out of context because there was a number of series of discussions going on online, and if you read the whole lot, I was saying that Jeremy Corbyn was a very principled individual. very passionate about the community, passionate about what he believed in. And I think he would have made a fantastic Prime Minister for this country.
But so, what about the current leader with Sir Keir Starmer? Do you think, how does he compare with that? Would you rather be serving under Jeremy Corbyn or Keir Starmer?
I'd be delighted to serve under a Labour government, because I saw from 1997 until 2010 the massive difference a Labour government made to communities like ours here in Pendle and across the country, especially to the British Asian community, the Muslim community. Massive difference that he made in terms of improving education, improving health, jobs,
well,
etc.
I think that if you, with all due respect, I think every time Labour gets into power, the country goes broke. All the standards go down as far as statistics go. Education standards go down every time Labour has come in. The country goes into debt when Labour is in.
Harry,
okay?
I'd actually disagree with you. I disagree with you. That's the propaganda of the right.
It is not. It is in black and white. When you're outgoing, when you're outgoing, the Chancellor of the Exchequer writes a little note on a piece of paper, says there is no money in the coffers. That is not propaganda. That is actually in black and white.
Actually, it wasn't the Chancellor who wrote that. It was the Chief Secretary to the Treasury.
I stand corrected. Thank you.
Who wrote that? But actually, if you look at the record of the Labour government from 1997 till 2010. They invested heavily in our infrastructure. If it wasn't for that infrastructure investment, our schools still be crumbling, our hospitals would have been privatised by a Tory government. And Gordon Brown actually is responsible for making sure and oversaw the impact of the world banking crisis, and managed to get the country through that without actually maxing out the debit card.
I see. Is that the Gordon Brown that you're talking about, who sold the country's gold at a knockdown price?
Well, let's compare Gordon Brown to Boris Johnson. You've got a buffling buffoon who can't even deal with the coronavirus. He can't grasp detail, and the country is going to the dogs. I'd rather have Gordon Brown anytime compared to Boris Johnson.
I think Boris Johnson I'm not partial here, but I think what we have here with coronavirus would be a difficult job for any Prime Minister, be it Labour Prime Minister or a Conservative. I think
clearly, Harry,
it's something new territory that we're in.
If I could just come back here, Harry, look, the coronavirus is a worldwide pandemic. Okay. It is not just our country, but you only have to look at Europe and other parts of the world. New Zealand is a fantastic example. Jacinda, who's the Prime Minister there, what she has done as a country, when coronavirus first became into being, and the scientists were making everyone aware of it and saying that it's coming down the line, she took immediate action to shut down airports, shut down schools. She took urgent action, which has saved thousands of lives in New Zealand. Whereas, if you compare that to Great Britain, Boris was still in checkers. He was going away on holidays. And he didn't have a clue. He didn't take the action that was needed of a leader. And as a result, coronavirus is now out of control.
They have
coronavirus
to, all leaders,
out of control, Harry.
Sorry.
And if you let me finish, Harry, coronavirus is now out of control. And unfortunately, what we now have is a pandemic that's taken root, and it's out of control, and the government can't handle it.
The government is, has to be advised. Nobody's born into positions of knowing everything. So they have advisors around you. They've got scientific advisors, they've got medical advisors, giving them advice on a daily basis. They're the ones that are monitoring where the virus is going. And as a Lancashire County Council, where you are, thinking of bringing a full lockdown again next week in this county where you are serving. So why has this been singled out? What do you think the problems are in Lancashire that the rest of the country don't have?
I tell you what the problems are in Lancashire. Number one, the government didn't take immediate action. Number two,
but it took action around the rest of the country. The rest of the country is not complaining. Okay. The rest of the country is following the instructions.
Harry, no, they're not. If you let me answer the question that you've just set out. Number one, the government took action early. It should have taken earlier action, and it didn't. And now we're in some difficulties. The issue in Lancashire, as parts of West Yorkshire and the North West is, we've got large parts of Lancashire which are deprived. We've got deprivation. People don't have the resources to sit at home for months on end and rely on their savings. People need to earn income, so people need to go back to work. There isn't mass testing for universities and schools when they reopened. So we now got a scenario where we've got Preston as a city, and we've got other cities around us, like Liverpool and Manchester, where tens of thousands of students are coming back to university with no testing system in place, and now we've got coronavirus out of control. The third issue that we've got is we've got schools where kids are going back to school and then they're going home. A lot of them are asymptomatic, so people don't have the symptoms of what is clearly defined as coronavirus. And because they don't have the symptoms, they're still passing that infection on. And as a result, what we need from government was a local test and trace system. I've been calling for this for months. I wrote to Boris Johnson only 10 days ago.
We can only go as far as the technology allows us. And we're going to take a short break here, and we'll continue with this conversation with Azhar Ali, Councillor Azhar Ali, after the break.
The issues of Kashmir have been eluding the world for a long time. I'm going to be bringing it out from the shadows. Why is the world ignoring Kashmir? And will the world continue to turn its back on two warring nations, both of which have nuclear capacity? And why hasn't the UN implemented its own resolution policy? And will it? And for all these questions, we will be digging for the answers to these tough questions. Please stay tuned for my new program, exclusive on Kashmir, The Pulse, with Kirsten Seymour. Watch for it.
Welcome back to the issues. I am joined here today by Councillor Azhar Ali, who is the leader of the Labour County Council in Lancashire. Do you think the Labour Party, believe that Pendle become Labour next election?
I think Pendle's always been a marginal seat, and I think the last election was a Brexit election. People voted on Brexit, get Brexit done, and Brexit's been done. We have to wait and see what happens in this next few weeks and whether a deal can be done with the European Union in terms of trade. We'll have to wait and see. But at the moment, yeah, of course.
You mentioned the B word. As you've mentioned the B word, let's bring it in.
Okay.
Do you think that Labour Party sat on the fence when on Brexit? I
think Labour in the referendum should have taken a stance and either been pro-Brexit or anti-Brexit, and they shouldn't have sat on the fence. They did sit on the fence in the referendum, and I think that cost us dearly. But you remember, members of the Labour Party and people who support the Labour Party are members of the population as a whole, and people have split views. I was a candidate here in Pendle at the last general election, and I remember knocking on doors of Labour voters who said, look, I want to get Brexit done. I'm sick of it. That's the only thing that dominates.
Which side are you then? Can I ask you the question? Which side were you? Are you
I was
inner or outer?
I was someone who felt that we were better off within the European Union. But, end of the day, people of the country voted for a referendum that said, look, let's leave, and then you have to respect that.
Wonderful. Azhar, you were an advisor to Tony Blair as well in his government. So what was that job? What did that entail?
After 7/7 happened, Number 10 asked whether I could help the government in engaging with communities and looking at the whole agenda around extremism and counter-terrorism. So I worked as advisor to the Labour government, to a number of different cabinet ministers from the period of 2005 to 2010. A very interesting and exciting time.
Well, interesting and exciting time for you probably, but do you think that when people started coming heavily on the Muslims after the 9/11, didn't they? So any prevent programs that were devised after, post that, were all directed at Muslims, were they not?
Well, the prevent program was controversial with some people, but the government had to produce some sort of action plan to try and reduce radicalisation within the communities, and also empower the police and other bodies to pursue those who were inciting terrorism.
Mainly Muslims, right? Because the statistics show that there is more terrorism that are non-Muslim terrorists, right, than Muslim terrorists. But
Absolutely.
do you think that this was very, very biased towards vilifying the Muslim community?
I think some people saw that as vilifying the Muslim community. I think some parts of the Prevent programme, looking back, they were very challenging and difficult, and it caused a lot of tensions within communities. And it caused division within communities because there were those who were saying, yes, we need to work with the Prevent programme, and then there were those who were anti the Prevent programme. Things have moved on, of course, but no, let's be honest, I travelled to other countries and advised other governments as well around counter-terrorism, and I can tell you, yes, there is a lot more non-Muslim terrorism out there, but specifically around after 7/7 and 9/11, the Muslim community were centre of attention across the world, and governments were wrestling with how they deal with it. How do they deal with the terror networks? And we had ISIS and others out there which were causing havoc across the world. And the Muslim countries and the Muslim community themselves were the biggest victims of terrorism.
Well, you're staying with your time as the advisor to Tony Blair. What do you think? What did you achieve that had a positive impact on the Pakistani community as an advisor to Blair?
I think there's not one specific thing. I think there's a lot of things that happened. I had a lot of time spent talking to imams in the mosques and community leaders up and down the country, working with organisations, trying to find solutions to some of the problems. And I think there was a lot of investment that went into communities generally. But I think secondly, what also happened was it was an opportunity, where we had Muslim ministers like Sadiq Khan, Shahid Malik, and others who were working within the government, and Chaudhry Sarwar, who is now the governor of Punjab, Khalid Mahmood and others, who really were out there as ambassadors for the Muslim community across the country. And Sadiq Khan in particular, I worked very closely with when he was a junior minister in Department of Communities and Local Government. And we spent a lot of time engaging with the other Muslim countries about the challenges that our youth had and what we could learn from other parts of the world.
Our youth, talking about youth, our youth suffers proportionally, worse off than the other indigenous, if you like. But what facilities have you, as a county councillor, as a Pendle councillor as well earlier on, have you developed any facilities, special facilities for our youth, to engage them?
I think in terms of, you're talking about Pendle or you're talking nationally, I think if I talk about Lancashire and Pendle, we have a youth zone here in Nelson. We have other facilities that are leisure facilities, etc. that are here. But one of the biggest difficulties that we have, and all councils have across the country at the moment, is the lack of funding, and there's some difficult decisions that are made around what facilities are kept open, or they're full-time or they're part-time. But I think one of the biggest things, I think, is the investment in our schools. I think the campaigns that I've been involved in and the lobbying I've been involved in, we've got after the riots in 2001 in Oldham and Bradford and here in Burnley and Pendle, what we managed to do was to get brand new schools. So in Nelson, we've got multi-million-pound Pendle Vale College. We've got Marsden Heights Community College.
And where did the funding come from?
That was government funding.
Government funding. So you do get funding for projects and things like that.
Yeah, so, but we've had to fight.
But youth seems to be left behind. And I mentioned mental health earlier on. So mental health amongst the Asian communities is a very big problem, and the youth amongst the Asian communities are very big, particularly the Pakistani community is a very big problem. So should you not be targeting, but hard target these areas with funding, and I'm sure funding will become available. Well,
absolutely, and this is what we've been successful in, whether it's funding for a CCTV, whether it's funding for town centre development, whether it's funding for regeneration. I've been involved with regenerating Briarfield Mills, which was a white elephant. It's now got housing, leisure, education. It's a complex which is really exciting. It's developing very quickly. 2 brand new schools, leisure centre. There's a lot being planned around here, which means a lot of investment both by the public sector and by the private sector.
So do you look forward to some improvements then?
Absolutely, but you've got to remember that government has a part to play. If they keep cutting our funding, it becomes more and more challenging to deliver those improvements and those outcomes for local communities. But one of the things that I want to just say is, one of the things I've been involved with and passionate about is empowering women. I chair an organisation called MAD, Men Against Domestic Violence, and we've been in existence for about 17 years, where we work with social services, with the police, with our communities.
Kashmir, a big subject, big topic. People suffering daily, horrendous human rights violations taking place. Let me hear your views on it.
I'm passionate about the Kashmir issue. When I was at university, I was passionate, and still am, about the Palestinian issue and human rights across the world. And when I became a leader of Pendle Borough Council, I supported a resolution on Pendle Council to set up a Kashmir working group. I've also, when I've been lobbying government of all different colours and different political parties for over 2 decades now, trying to get the voice of the Kashmiris heard. And I think, irrespective of whether it's a Labour government or a Conservative government, I don't think enough has been done. Robin Cook was probably the last person who actually really pushed the Kashmir issue. And I think at the moment, what's going on in occupied Kashmir is nothing else but a genocide that's taking place. And, with the Modi government and the ideology that they're pursuing, it's frightening that the world is so quiet when there's a genocide taking place.
Well, when you've got your leader, where do you think your leader stands on Kashmir? Because Jeremy Corbyn, clearly we knew where Jeremy Corbyn was, but I think where's Keir Starmer on this? He's very much on the right of things. He's pro-Israel. How are you going to make edgeways with your current leader, the way in his stance? The way he stands with his views on he hasn't got any views on Kashmir. He doesn't want to talk about Kashmir.
Well, I disagree with you. Myself and Councillor Wajid Khan, Councillor Wasim Zafar, working with Andrew Gwynn MP, have set up Labour Friends of Kashmir, which is now part of the Labour Party body. We have a meeting with Keir Starmer in a few weeks' time. We've had meetings with Stephen Kinnock and Lisa Nandy in the past. There's a number of MPs, hundreds of MPs who have joined Labour Friends of Kashmir, and we've got membership that's growing. And Keir Starmer has made it very clear that he's always been a human rights lawyer. He's anti-human rights abuses wherever they are, whether it's Kashmir or Palestine or any parts of the world.
With all due respect, being a human rights lawyer is totally different to being a leader of a party and is able to do something. In one place he's prosecuting people or defending people. Here he has to defend the people of another country as a leader of a political party, which is very, very different to what you're saying as a.
Okay, well, let me be
Yeah,
very clear with you then, Harry. He's made it very clear that he is anti-human rights abuses in Kashmir, and he will work with different bodies and organisations to raise that issue at the highest level. Now, like I said, I have a meeting with him along with colleagues in a couple of weeks' time, purely on this Kashmir issue from the Labour Friends of Kashmir platform. And we'll make it very clear to him that Kashmir is a genocide that's going on. The people of Kashmir deserve a plebiscite, and whatever the outcome of the plebiscite needs to be respected in line with United Nations resolutions.
In 2017, in January 2017, there was a 3-hour debate in the British Parliament on Kashmir, and there was a resolution that was unanimously carried. And that was clearly, the resolution was clearly putting the blame of what's going on in Kashmir on the British at the time, presently as well, if you take it. Talking about, you mentioned you had a Kashmir working group, that you formed a Kashmir working group, and I think Pendle was one of the first ones to form that. What's happened to that group? Is it active? Is it still, what are you doing with that?
Well, Pendle's Kashmir Working Group is still there. It's still part of the council. I'm not on Pendle Council anymore. I'm on Lancashire County Council, so I couldn't tell you what it's doing. But I know that the councillors here in Pendle of all political parties are very active, very vocal about the Kashmir issue, whether there's national demonstrations or there's other events that take place in their local parties. They are very vociferous and vocal about standing up for a voice for people of Kashmir.
And finally, what's your future political aspirations?
Well, my political aspirations is to make sure that I can serve the communities that I live in, and actually where people don't have a voice is give them a strong voice, and where people live in communities that are deprived, that stand up and fight for their rights. And if I can continue to do that, I'll be very happy.
Thank you very much. That's Councillor Azhar Ali, Labour leader in the Lancashire County Council. I've been joined with him today. I had the pleasure of his company for the last 45 minutes. It's been a delightful talking to Councillor Ali. And
Thank you.
Hopefully we can come and join us again on this show.
I look forward to it, Harry.
Thank you very much indeed. And thank you to you for listening. The world is full of issues, and as long as there are issues, we'll be here. See you then.